Most people only know the easy way. They'll always close their eyes. Will you make the same excuses? Will you buy into their lies? What will you do? What are you going to say?
Hello, welcome to another drive-in double feature. I'm Ryan,
I'm Nathan.
and this is the podcast where we talk about 2 movies a week every Tuesday and Thursday. But before I get into anything at all, we got a Patreon over at patreon.com/drive-in double feature podcast. It is just a fun area where we can have some games, have fun conversations, get a little extra content, all for supporting us by $5 a month as a thank you. And if you choose not to support us, do not worry. It doesn't affect any regular content whatsoever. But, oh my God, this one, Nathan. On Thursday, we're going to be talking about 1989's No Holds Barred, directed by Thomas Wright, starring Hulk Hogan.
Whoa, our first Hulk Hogan movie? Come on. It's taking
I
so long.
know. I know. You'd think it would have been a lot sooner, especially with being me on the podcast.
I know. I don't think we've talked much about I think it's popped up, but I don't think you've really gone in the depth of how much into wrestling you actually are.
Yes, that's very true. But
Yeah.
before I start gushing, Nathan, do you have any experience at all with this movie? And if you don't, do you have any experience with Hulk Hogan at all?
No experience with this movie. Very light experience with Hulk Hogan. Of course, I've seen Rocky 3. And I know of Hulk Hogan. You know, he's probably one of the most famous wrestlers. He's very noticeable. You just know about him, and he's very iconic. But I don't really have a lot of experience with him, other than like cameos. I can't even think of any cameos, but Hulk Hogan shows up in like
Gremlins 2,
things. That's right. Yeah. What else is he in? Really quickly.
Muppets in Space,
I have seen Muppets in Space. It's been a long
Suburban
time.
Commando, Mr. Nanny, Santas with Muscles, Three Ninjas at High Noon Mountain.
Now I've never seen those Santa with Muscles, Romeo and Juliet.
Yeah.
Wow, a ton of TV shows. Camp
Yeah.
WWE.
Well, that's a WWE made show.
And of course, I've played wrestling video games, so I know of him from wrestling video games as well.
Yes, absolutely. But
Mhm.
well, yes, as you alluded to, yes, I am a huge wrestling fan, and growing up, very, very big Hulk Hogan fan. Like,
Mhm.
probably my favorite wrestler, like a hero of mine. Quite literally, I was
Mhm.
a huge Hulk Hogan fan, and I would watch him. Like, I literally couldn't get enough of him. Like, I would watch him in WCW because he was originally in WWF, but he went over to WCW. Got to see him perform live a couple of times, which is cool.
That's really cool.
Would buy a bunch of tapes or rent them from Blockbuster, like his old tapes from the '80s, and just like
Mhm.
couldn't get enough of it. And I would just watch them over and over again because he was so cool to me. You know, just this larger than life human being, and just
Mhm.
seeing him beat all the bad guys in wrestling matches was just like such a highlight for me.
I know, that's
And
awesome.
and because of that, that's made me a wrestling fan. Since then, and from recent events of Hulk Hogan, it's
Yeah.
it's kind of hard to give him that same support, and I don't. But uh, you know, like everyone else,
Yeah.
everyone you know and love, it was famous, turns out to be some type of scumbag.
Yeah.
But you know, that's the problem.
That's the problem with like liking movies and Hollywood and like celebrity figures, is that I guess everybody has something negative from their past and negative things that they've done, but you can still appreciate how much he meant to you as a kid, I feel like.
Yeah. So, and just to give you, I kind of like setting the table for this type of thing, kind of like how I do for the Godzilla movies. But
Mhm.
just to give you sort of an idea, Hulk Hogan, wrestler from the started out in the '70s wrestling,
Really?
just like very late '70s. Yeah, like big muscular dude. Ended up wrestling in Shea Stadium, that type of thing, until he got his big break in Rocky 3, like you mentioned, which was a very big cameo at the time, where he was this larger than life human being. I mean, just comparing the size between him and Sylvester Stallone in those movies is just, it's astonishing. He looks like he's just totally dwarfs
Yeah.
Stallone.
Yeah.
And anyway, he wrestles for the AWA, the American Wrestling Association, where he kind of starts building some steam off of that. And once he does, Vince McMahon at the time, who owns the WWF, made a huge push and basically was like, I want to take over the entire landscape of wrestling. And the guy who's going to get me there is Hulk Hogan.
Yeah.
And that happened in 1984.
Okay.
So Hulk Hogan ends up very quickly, after getting hired, becoming the world heavyweight champion.
Yeah.
And he goes on a 4-year long title reign. Doesn't lose to anybody, and doesn't hardly ever loses a match.
I gotta know, does that rank up there as like one of, if not the longest title reign?
It's not the highest, because there is wrestlers from the 70s like Bruno Sammartino and the 60s that would have like 5, 6, 7-year long reigns. And
Gotcha.
that was a very different timeline, where the title was very rarely defended. And Bruno Sammartino was defending the title a lot more in New York City. So he was like a New York, local hero at the time.
Gotcha.
But on the grand scale of things, Hulk Hogan wins the world title, becomes probably the biggest household name and wrestler at the time.
Yeah.
And like everywhere you'd go, he'd be on lunch boxes. People would be dressing up as Hulk Hogan for Halloween.
Hulkmania, right?
Hulkamania was a very real thing. And it was just kind of like, and even now, like when people think of pro wrestler, it's like they usually draw a wrestler that kind of looks like Hulk Hogan in a way.
And I mean, whenever I think of wrestling, Hulk Hogan is one of the first people that I think of.
Absolutely. And I think in terms of famousness, I think he's probably one of the most famous according to wrestlers. I mean, Dwayne Johnson, I guess, is up there now, but
yeah.
But in terms of celebrity at the time, when you say wrestling, that's who you generally think of first. But
yeah.
Anyway, he goes on this 4-year long title reign, and he's getting very big on the scene. And now they're kind of thinking like, well, what's the next step? We've got all this fame. He's going on talk shows. He's getting these kind of movie offers, but he hasn't really found like an actual movie role yet. And kind of the idea at the time was that Hulk Hogan, I guess, was originally offered a role of some sort in a New Line movie. I don't know if it was No Holds Barred specifically, but Hulk Hogan was interested. But Vince McMahon, the owner, he kind of was like, oh, well, I kind of helped Hulk Hogan get this amount of fame. Let me try to get in on this deal, which is why the WWF kind of takes over that, because this was supposed to be like a New Line type of movie, but then WWF comes in and produces it, bankrolls this whole entire movie.
Really? Okay, interesting.
So that's why WWF is like a real, like is in this movie. It's like the WWF.
Yeah.
But it's not. So probably like the biggest legend of the time for this movie is that allegedly what happened is that the original screenwriter, Dennis Hacken, wrote the screenplay to this movie. And then when Hulk Hogan and Vince McMahon looked at the script, they were very unsatisfied with it.
Okay.
So the legend goes is that they ended up renting a hotel room in Florida for 72 hours and just would do cocaine and screenwrite this movie.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Screenwrite this movie for 3 days. And I got to tell you, I mean, I know you don't know like the whole I guess, lore or like what these types of people are like
Mm-mm.
uh, at all. But this movie for me is more so a portrait of Vince McMahon.
Really?
Like,
Okay.
like, like, like I don't think you were watching wrestling. You know, you might have been, but like, do you remember like Vince McMahon would be like on screen with like Stone Cold Steve Austin
Um,
and Stone Cold would like beat him up or whatever.
I don't watch a lot of wrestling, but I have seen clips of Vince McMahon actually being in the ring and actually like doing things, of course.
Yeah, Vince McMahon is a very outlandish human being. I mean, it just
Yes.
if you've ever gone and like watched him like do interviews with these types of different people, like there's one he did. God, I forget who it was, but like he's like physically intimidating. Like one of the, I think it was like well, it was like a sports show where like he like literally slaps like notes out of a guy's hand, that
Oh
type
my
of thing.
God.
And it's just, but the main bad guy in this movie, which is played by Kurt Fuller,
Yeah.
it's like almost exactly of how Vince McMahon would act on TV.
That's it. I got that vibe from like this whole thing was like, oh yeah, Kurt Fuller he seems like almost like Vince McMahon in a way.
And the rumor at the time, because I also listened to an interview with Kurt Fuller in
Yeah.
preparation for this, is that um, even though this is movie is directed by Thomas Wright,
Hmm.
supposedly like he had marching orders about how to direct this
I'm
movie. And
sure he did. Yeah.
so I wouldn't take this as a reflection of like Thomas Wright's work, because if you look at Thomas Wright's filmography, is that he actually does have like he's not like a one and done director. Like he's directed like some TV shows and things like
Yeah.
that.
And
So
like some popular TV shows too, if I remember right. So
mm,
he does good. I think Smallville was one of them.
right, so it's not like he's this hack or whatever that they brought in, but it was
No.
very much. But I think it was very much so kind of like they brought in uh like a director and they were wanting to just tell him what to do type of thing. And
Yeah.
it really it makes a lot of sense like after hearing a lot of that stuff for this movie, because
Yeah.
this movie is very very infamous in the rest of the wrestling community. it
Really?
just
Okay, that makes sense.
it's just everyone makes that joke like, have you watched No Holds Barred and no hold
Hmm.
it. I will say this, it's very much like this movie was treated as like a very serious action movie type of thing.
Oh, okay, got you.
But uh, when they re-released this movie on Blu-ray, I think like 2012, 2013, something like that, when they re-released this movie on Blu-ray, it was very much like the whole like wink, wink, nudge, nudge, like, oh, check this movie out type
Oh,
of thing.
okay, got you. As someone who's like a complete outsider to that community and like this movie, I feel like I knew about this movie, but I didn't know much about it. To me, it felt so tongue in cheek. It really did. But it makes sense that it wasn't. But watching it, I had a blast. It was so entertaining.
This is up there. I
Uh-huh.
mean,
It's
so my experience with the movie, I was watching it a lot as a kid because it was Hulk Hogan. I'm like, yeah,
yeah,
Hulk. And but now watching it now, it's one of the funniest movies you'll see.
it is. It's one of the classic so bad it's good type movies. It's really like just you'll have a good time. It made me laugh a lot.
Yeah, it's fabulous. I mean, it's
Yeah.
very much
Hmm.
just these people, just everyone just hamming it up like so much. So like they're just screaming, yelling, and just these larger than life personalities. Hulk Hogan is like foaming at the mouth at looking at some of these bad guys, and
Yes,
then
yeah.
you have Kirk Fuller. I mean, my God,
Oh,
this guy is just
I
so insane.
love Kurt Fuller in this movie. He is my favorite part of this movie. He rocks in this. It's the things he does, the things he says is great.
He's so good. I mean, it just
Yeah.
very clearly hamming it up. And
Yeah.
so again, okay, going back to that interview that I mentioned, since we're talking about Kurt Fuller, is
Hmm.
he was kind of talking about like Vince McMahon would be on set, and
Mm.
he had to audition like 5 times for this part. Like it's
Wow.
like it's that big of a deal. And supposedly, like what happened is, like when you're an actor on screen, they always tell you like act real small, like small, like less is more type of thing. And
Hmm.
this one, he so like one there was one line read where he says, "Miss Tidings, take a leak," type of thing, like
Yeah.
to like one of the executives. And he said, like, well, originally when they were filming that scene, he kind of did it like real dismissive, like "Miss Tidings, take a leak, like get out of here," type of thing.
Uh-huh.
But supposedly Vince McMahon was like on set being like, "No, louder, more powerful," like,
More screaming. Yeah, because
and
though he says it with power. He's like, "Mistidings, take a leak." Yeah, it's
yeah.
great, great
So
stuff.
that's what he said. He said, like I've always taught as an actor, to act real small. And like this one, I couldn't get any bigger. Like I was just trying, I was just like always trying to outdo myself, type of thing. And
Yeah.
so it's crazy to think like you think like that, like like actors are always told to calm down, but to have somebody tell you the exact opposite is crazy to think.
I know, I know. I imagine if it sounds like it would be fun, but it also sounds like hell. It sounds like Vince there was hell to be on set with.
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, that's the rumor at the time. And this movie, so okay, I guess we got to dig into the movie now. So
Of course. So yeah, yeah.
yeah, Hulk
Uh,
Hogan plays a wrestler. Shocking.
no way, but not himself.
No, he's called Rip,
Yeah, rip.
and
Oh,
does the whole like rip 'em type of thing with like and
hmm.
the movie starts out like in a WWF event, and
Yeah, Jesse
he
Ventura is one of the announcers
yeah,
as well. Yeah.
yeah, which that was around the time he was doing commentary for them, so
Yeah. I
that does make sense.
who took Hulk Hogan's title?
Like in real life,
In real life, yes, yeah.
oh, it was a controversial, like he was screwed out of the title by Andre the Giant and the $1 Million Man.
Really? Okay, interesting.
Yeah, it's I mean that's how Hulk Hogan did this movie. Like he drops the title, and
Hmm.
they have like this big tournament, and then Randy Savage, Macho Man Randy Savage, is the new world champion, and he kind of
Yeah.
like carries the flag for Hogan type of thing while Hogan's going to film this movie. But then,
Okay.
of course, after Hogan's done filming the movie, Hogan becomes the champion again. So,
Yeah. Yeah, now that he can go back to doing it full time. That's fun. I'd say
right.
that's funny. Um,
Uh, but the movie starts with him having a wrestling match with
yes.
uh, Jake Bullet, I believe his name was.
Okay.
And that's that guy right there. That's a real wrestler too. That's Bill Eadie, or AKA Axe, from the tag team Demolition.
Okay. A lot of wrestling cameos, I'm gonna guess.
There's a lot. Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
gonna point out a lot of them too. So
Yeah. Is this usually how wrestling matches go? Hulk is in that hold for so long. He is in there for a long time, man.
there's some wrestling matches that are like that, where
Okay.
they call them rest holds, where it's just
Okay.
like the guys will throw on like a headlock or something, and like kind of use that time to kind of catch their breath,
Okay. Yeah.
or whatever. And but there are some where it's like this big long like just choke fest, and it's just very boring. But
Yeah.
the thing that's weird though is that this movie like does like they're very careful not to say that wrestling is scripted or fake in any sort of way. This movie is treating like wrestling is that it is
Yes.
100% real. Like
Hmm.
whatever these guys are doing, like the whole time like Hogan's having this fight, it's like he actually is like really wrestling this
Yeah.
guy.
Yeah. It's not a peek that behind the curtains type movie. It's wrestling is real in this world. When he goes out on that ring, he is taking a beating. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, not a
He
Hulk. He wins. So
he wins, yeah,
yeah.
but it's very much like, oh man, like good job taking out Jake there, Hogan. Like that's like I mean,
Yeah.
or Rip does. So uh anyway, he's like the biggest star on TV. Like he's like from the channel that he works for. He's like the biggest star there. But the weird part
Mhm.
is that they kind of allude that he's working for like the television station, and even though he's not like actually
Yeah,
contracted to the WWF, which is a little weird, but
yeah, the World Television Network. And or is that the one
that's the rival
that's the
corporation.
rival corporation? Okay, but yeah, the rival corporation, right? They want Hulk Hogan, or sorry, Rip. But Rip is a man of his words. He would
I
never ever switch over for no amount of money.
that part is so freaking funny. It's
I
just because it's like they're trying to paint Hulk Hogan as like he is this ultra saint.
Yes, yeah, like the best person around. Even the bad guy of this movie wants him so bad. He rips off a blank check, gives him a blank check, and he's like, write any amount of money, put it down, and I will give it to you to go over here. And he's like, no, no, I won't.
Yeah, so they want him, and like you said, they're like, "Say, sir, we can't do it. Rip's word is his bond," and and he goes like you said, they off he does go to like this rival television station, and they offer him a bunch of money to work there, and Hulk, and he says, "Listen, you idiot! Like you're gonna sign this check, or you dummy." And the famous line, which Kurt Fuller uses a bunch, is he calls him "you jock ass."
You jock ass. Yeah, a bunch of jock asses.
And
Um,
so another rumor at the time, which Kurt Fuller said, was that apparently, like the scene where how it happened in the scene is that Hulk Hogan like wads up the check and he literally shoves it in Kurt Fuller's mouth.
oh wow.
And
Yeah.
but you remember that scene?
Yes,
And
yeah.
yeah, so apparently, like Hogan, like actually like jam like as far as he could, like try to jam it down his throat, and
Oh
like
my
Kurt Fuller
God.
just started choking.
Jeez, what the
Like didn't realize that you're not supposed to not actually do it in the
yeah,
movie.
in the movies you don't actually do these things. There is a great line from in like all of this conversation that Rip says. It's contracts are just words, because there's a new female in the office that is business oriented, but Rip has the hots for her, and this interaction is so funny because
I,
Hulk Hogan just has his way pretty much.
well, going back to there was one thing
Oh
I was going
yeah.
to say. The funniest part about that contract scene is like talking about Rip would never break contracts. He would never do that.
Uh-huh.
About 5 years later, Hulk Hogan famously broke his contract with WWF to go work for WCW. So
Wow.
very much like not in that same vein. But yeah, you're forgetting one scene though beforehand is when immediately after that meeting,
Mhm.
Hulk Hogan gets attacked in a parking garage.
Yes, yeah, with
The
quite a line.
Yeah, and Hulk Hogan like just that he gets trapped in a limousine. Like they barricade this
Mhm.
limousine, and then Hulk Hogan jet propels himself out of the roof of the out of the limousine, like quite literally, just like
Yeah.
out of there.
Yeah. And it's great fight scene.
Yeah,
Love
just
it.
beats the crap out of all these guys. Like, and then Hulk
Mhm.
Hogan turns into like an animal where he's just snarling and growling
Yeah.
at these
Um,
people.
and then
And I'll let you explain the famous
oh,
scene.
wonderful scene where he holds up one of the guys, he's got him gripped, and he goes, "What's that smell?" And the bad guy just in the worst voice possible goes, "Dookie."
And then
Like,
Hogan's,
oh my God, I was
I like it.
dying.
I like it because then Hogan's like Dookie, and then he's
Yeah.
just got this like real confused face.
What's Dookie? I've never
But
done that before.
the thing,
Uh,
like
how does
the
this movie
guy,
take itself seriously with a line like that?
so I mean, he does that. The guy's like his whole like back's like up to his back is like soaking wet. Like he just took like the gnarliest. The nar-
I mean, if you had a Hulk Hogan snarling in your face, acting like an animal beating people up, I get it. I get
like
it, man.
like you just had like an oil slick just happen out of your pants type of thing. It just
Yeah,
awful looking. And then yeah,
wonderful.
that's I think that's the most famous scene from the movie
When that
because
Dookie line happened, I was like, I've heard this before.
that's the part that everyone always brings up whenever they bring up this movie.
Yeah.
But no, you're right though. So when they go, there's a new sexy executive in the office, and
Hmm.
played by Joan Severance, and she tries to play the whole like, I'm not interested in you. You're just a dumb idiot type of thing. But then
Yeah.
Hogan, like you said, he is just leering and like quite literally like moaning when he sees this woman like and he's in the middle of like an office. It's like like a boardroom where he's just going like oh
Yeah.
I'm just like
It's
like
so bad.
it's so gross. Like he's just looking at this
Yeah.
woman like
And,
yeah, I like
and
what I see.
and we'll get into it later, but the way Rip is towards this woman, he's pretty much the horniest man alive. He like can't handle himself around her.
Like okay, I get it. Like this movie is Hulk Hogan's movie, but
Yeah.
this movie it was very much marketed towards children. Like take
Yes. Yeah.
like kids need to go see this movie. Kids drag your parents to come see this movie.
Mm.
And then Hulk Hogan like would even like there's an interview at the time where he goes on Arsenio's show
Okay.
where he's talking to Arsenio Hall and says, I'm not going in here with like a bunch of dead bodies, holding a bunch of machine guns.
Mm.
I'm keeping it nice and squeaky clean for all the little Hulksters out there.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
And I'm like, this movie is not clean at all.
It's
Like this
really
is
not.
it's so violent. It's not like rip your head off type of violence type of thing, but there's a ton of violence in here that's
Well, I was
and just the sex jokes and like, all these
yeah.
weird lines.
Well, I'm gonna even say like part of the plot line is that the main television bad guy makes a wrestling competition that it's actually like you beat someone up almost to death until they can't fight anymore. And the plot is that kids get scared by this, and he's like, I don't care. And it's like, well, and they show the actual violence, and you're right. It's like, how is this a kids movie? That's so weird.
Well, there's like these weird sex jokes in there too. Like
Yeah.
there's like the implication that Hulk Hogan and her about to have sex.
Oh,
There's an attempted rape scene in this movie too.
yes.
It
Um,
is so
the
bizarre.
scene I am thinking of, and I think it's a little bit later, but we can talk about it now since we're on the topic, is the one where they rent a hotel room and oh no, they got one with one bed. And she's very much like, no, I'm not into you, Rip. And then he's like, well, let's sleep on the same bed together. And like, he's just so pushy during all of this. There's a scene, they put a curtain between them, and once again, how is this for kids? There's a scene of the bed moving up and down, and you're supposed to think like, oh, he's masturbating, and I'm like,
He's
really?
jacking in.
Yeah, he's free jacking, and and it's the joke. She she pulls back the curtain, and he's doing push-ups, and it's
Well,
like,
it's they do like the point like they shove like his feet. That's the joke when
yeah,
he's using his feet to balance himself on the bed for do
yeah,
these push-ups, but they do
yeah,
this close-up where it looks like his butt, like it's supposed to be like a butt that's on his. And
yeah.
I'm like, what? Like,
But
it's yeah, like it's implying that he's masturbating like in the
yeah.
bed, and then eventually he does get into bed. He jumps in the bed, and then he breaks the bed, and like she rolls on top of him. He's like, "Oh, hello there," type of thing.
Yeah, but that's not even like the worst part is she says no, hops off, and he gets mad that she does not want any of it. It's like, I didn't mean to do that. Like he's pretty much angry that she will not have sex with him, and he leaves, and he's even like, I'm gonna go sleep with the couch. It's funnier than you are and more fun. Just
Are
leave.
hotels okay with you just sleeping on the couch in the lobby?
I do not think so. It depends on the hotel you're sleeping in, I guess.
I guess. There's so many more scenes I'd love to talk about. Like that. Another one I want to mention was
Mhm.
Kurt Fuller and his cronies like walking into this real seedy bar, and that's
Mhm.
where he gets the idea. And
Yeah.
again, like this movie's supposed to be marketed towards kids, and like another okay. The other thing too that you can dig into like how this is a Vince McMahon type of movie.
Yeah.
Uh, Another like legend or myth or legend about Vince McMahon is that he famously loves like poop jokes,
Makes
and
sense.
so and that's why the Dookie thing happened. And the other thing too is like he loves making fun of like you know people being gay or like effeminate or whatever. And there's a line in here where like
Good
they show
line.
up and they show up and it's like these three guys in suits, and
Mhm.
it's like this real haggard looking waitress, and she's like, you guys must be looking for the gay bar across the street type of thing, like.
Yeah. And
And yeah.
well, I think it's funny because these are directed at his two lackeys, his two like kind of wimpy lackeys, and then all these derogatory jokes are put onto them, not Kurt Fuller. He doesn't really get like these gay jokes, or later while they're peeing, somebody's like, "You got a tiny wanger." That doesn't get put on Kurt Fuller. It's
Yeah,
on the other
again,
two dudes.
kids movie talking about the size of these men's
I
penises. It's
know.
now it's like
Yeah, what a wild scene, because it's like a whole long scene about these two. They gotta pee, and then there's a big one of those trough urinals, which are like the worst things in the world. And of course, this guy just grabs them around the arms and starts looking them up and down. So
okay, and so that's another famous wrestler.
oh, okay,
That's Stan Hansen.
okay,
That's big in the States, much bigger, like wrestling legend in Japan.
really,
Probably at the time, one of the most famous American wrestlers to wrestle in Japan.
that's really cool.
So uh, you can see why they picked him. But he was like a legitimate tough guy as well.
Hmm.
That's the kind of the thing. Like Kirk Fuller and these guys go to this bar, and that's just they fight into a circle,
Hmm.
and just like the rules are just you can't kill anyone type of thing.
Yeah,
And Kurt Fuller's like perfect. Like let's just do
Mhm.
this as a TV show. And I thought they would get like some type of arena or whatever. Like they just bring cameras to this little crappy
Yeah.
bar,
They just
and they're
film it
just
in the bar. It's that easy.
like they just and honestly one of the worst names I ever heard for a TV show. We've got a new show. It's called Battle of the Tough Guys.
That sounds like a joke out of like a cartoon, like SpongeBob would do that or something. Battle of the Tough Guys.
Yeah, it's like it's so one of the worst titles I've ever heard for
Yeah,
a thing like that.
pretty
And
bad.
but Kirk Fuller is just really gung ho about this idea, and it kind of starts out like these bunch of like hicks and like these like guys with like a eye patch. There's this one guy that's real hairy looking that gets beaten
Mhm.
up, and then all of a sudden, this big muscular
Oh
guy
yeah,
shows up, and his name is Zeus.
Zeus. I did not understand that at first because he said his name and like, "What's your name?" And I all I heard was a garble. I was like, "What? What was that?" They said his name again though, but I was really confused.
And I'm sure you recognized him.
Yeah,
And
tiny Lister, right?
yeah, that's Tiny Lister.
Mhm.
So allegedly, him at the time was they were. So there's multiple different angles where supposedly like they saw a bunch of people, and Hulk Hogan says like he kind of saw Zeus and was like, "That's him. Like I want him in the movie," type of thing. And
Mhm.
but then like it went from like Zeus said the guy Tiny Lister like he had an interview where supposedly it started out as like they're looking for a muscular guy, and then it's like they're looking for a black muscular guy, and
Okay.
like why that was the thing I don't know. But Tiny Lister like Hulk Hogan like very famously denied that he was never on steroids for the longest time, and even though he very clearly was,
Yeah.
and Zeus is funny because he's like, yeah, I was on the gas at the time. It's
Just
like,
very open about it.
like yeah, like whatever. I mean, it's very obvious he is as well.
Yeah.
It's just he's got muscles on his muscles type of thing. So,
Hmm.
um, but yeah, he's this very monster like presence.
Oh,
He
huge dude.
just annihilates all these guys with zero effort whatsoever, and
Hmm.
becomes the champion of that league or whatever. And
Yeah.
the end goal is they want Rip to come challenge Zeus,
Yes.
and it's he kind of just goes on a spree where he's just like fighting all these other guys.
Yeah. But God, there's that one plot line. So Rip has a brother. He gets his ass kicked by Tiny Lister and ends up in a wheelchair.
That's the other thing. Like Zeus almost murders his brother.
Hmm.
And before that though, Zeus has a fight with another big muscular man. Did you recognize him?
No.
That's Jeep Swenson, who is also Bane in Batman and Robin.
Really? I didn't even know that. That's really cool.
Yeah. Uh, yeah, he gets his ass kicked,
Hmm.
and Hogan, like in this movie, he wears a lot of like tight spandex and a lot
Hmm.
of like blue, like black and red type of outfit, but so kind of
Hmm.
like Gleaming the Cube, where it had like the ridiculous scene of like he wore like punk funeral attire
Yes, yeah.
when his brother gets beaten. I don't know if you noticed, but he changed to like an all black,
I
like he was
did notice
mourning
that.
mourning like in ensemble.
But what's even worse is he gets his ass kicked again when he's in a wheelchair. He still gets like thrown to the ground. This is way later in the movie, but it's like, man, this man takes some real abuse.
Yeah, uh, but it's revealed that Joan Severance's character was working for Kurt Fuller, and
Yeah.
Kurt Fuller's character was like basically commanding that she sleeps with Hulk Hogan.
Yeah, she like
Like,
refused, but yeah, he was like, you got to do it. It's part of the job kind of
yeah,
deal.
and then Kurt Fuller just paintbrush slaps her in the face,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and then later in the movie, like I said, like Hogan, it like she's in a parking garage, and like this guy's like, "This is from Mr. Brell," and he starts to like try to rape her,
That's right.
and
Yeah.
I'm just like, what the hell? Like Joan Severance like gets absolutely punished in this movie for like no
Yeah.
reason at all.
Yeah, just for being a woman. I'm sure when you were a kid watching this, a lot of this kind of flew over your head.
Oh yeah, I mean, I didn't even understand what that concept was for a lot of that stuff, but
Yeah.
I mean, it just I just realized, when you're a kid, you're thinking, oh yeah, of course Hulk Hogan gets the girl, like type of thing,
That's
and
just the way it works.
yeah, which that's the other thing. Like Hogan's like kind of portrayed like as this kid friendly superhero. It's like you don't want to. It's weird to think of him as like this romantic, like love interest type of character in a movie. It just
Yeah.
doesn't work.
It really doesn't. I don't know. That's the last thing I think about this character is about him wanting like a woman and like romancing her and all that. It just doesn't work for the character. Um,
Yeah, well, there's also the scene too where he can apparently speak perfect French.
oh yeah, the diner scene where everybody's like, where the waiter's like, "Hey, dummy." Well, he doesn't call him a jockass, but he might as well have.
Might I recommend the hot dog?
Yeah, but then he speaks perfect French. Even the girl there is like, this is something you might like. You might like this dish.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but of course she fully falls in love with him, and
of course. Who wouldn't?
yeah,
Uh-huh.
fully falls in love with him, supports him in every way, and then the another really funny scene. So after Hulk Hogan's brother gets beaten up, and Hogan's like sobbing, like
Mm-mm.
in the hospital, and he goes and he finds where Zeus trains,
Mm.
and it's this really funny scene where there's just a constant video of Kurt Fuller talking to Zeus where it's like,
Yes.
Rip says the worms aren't good enough for you. And just talking a bunch of smack about like Rip said this about you, Rips.
Uh-huh.
Like and Hogan like starts having like these hallucinations where he's walking into a room with mirrors like
Mhm.
before,
Oh,
and
that's right. Yeah.
he thinks he sees Zeus and like throws a free weight. Just and then Hogan takes a weight bar and then javelin
That's
throws
right.
it
Yeah.
into a security camera.
Yeah, he's pushed to the edge, and he does fight him. He does eventually take the chance, and he goes after him. Because I mean, he does say like, you lose the title if you if you don't fight him. And God, that last fight scene is insane. It's in front,
Yeah,
yeah, it's in front of the crowd, and it goes places. It's wonderful.
you don't think for it to go into some areas that it does, but it
Yeah.
it, it fully does because it starts out in the ring, they're fighting, then it kind of spills out of the ring, and Kurt
Yeah.
Fuller is just absolutely losing his mind, like seeing
Yeah.
this unfold before his eyes. Like he's ripping like a random electrical cords out of the walls. He's like
Yes.
ripping things up, and they eventually get to the top of a balcony, like where they're filming this, because and Hogan finally like knocks him off, and then Zeus like basically falls to his death,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
the ring collapses, and then you just see Zeus just like bleeding, like
Yeah, Hulk Hogan's over here like it's squeaky clean, no death. Yeah, they got that, and Kurt Fuller dies in like a horrible death because he gets electrocuted to death. And what makes it even worse, Hulk Hogan walks away. Kurt Fuller gets electrocuted, dies, fries to death, and the crowd starts cheering.
I
People
know.
don't even know who this guy is, and they're just like, "Oh, this guy's dead! Woo, yeah,
Yeah,
you
the
go, Rick."
crowd the crowd is elated that this man is dead.
The man they don't know.
Right. It's so funny. Then the movie's just like credits, happy ending. Like
What a yeah. God, this movie it was a blast. I'm really happy we watched it. I don't know a lot about wrestling or anything, but it's like just one of those. It's just a lot of bad stuff happens. It's a bad movie, but it's so entertaining the whole time.
well, it doesn't end there, Nathan.
No,
Um,
I'm sure it doesn't.
so the movie comes out. It I believe it was number 2 at the box office because this movie
Mhm.
had the great idea to go head to head with Indiana Jones and the Last
Oh
Crusade in
my
the same
God.
same weekend.
I'm sure Vince McMahon was like, "We're gonna beat Indy. We got way better than Indy."
So I haven't heard Vince McMahon's perspective, but
Yeah.
Hulk Hogan did write in his book about this movie, and
Mhm.
he was like saying the most outlandish lies. Because that's the other thing about Hogan is that he
Mhm.
tells like these really exaggerated lies, and he was just saying like we were number 2 in the box office, and then the next week we're beating Ghostbusters 2, and it's like Ghostbusters 2 didn't even come out the very next week, and
Interesting.
just like acting like this is like this little movie that could, even though it got tarnished
Yeah.
in the and the ratings. Like it, I think it was Indiana Jones at the time was like out on like 2,000 screens.
Yeah.
I think Hogan, like No Holds Barred, was out on like 1,000 something screens, and then
Mm.
the very next week it went down to like number like
Wow.
300 screens or something like that,
That's low.
and see, I think what it was, the whole reason why this movie got number 2 is, if you look from an analyst standpoint, is that Indiana Jones was so crowded that people that couldn't get tickets to Indiana Jones ended up seeing this movie. And then the next
Hmm.
week, when they could actually go see that movie and watch Indiana Jones instead, nobody saw No Holds Barred.
Makes sense. That makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh,
And I totally recommend there's Hulk Hogan's book, like just it's so funny, like him like talking about how this movie was like a huge success, and just like
Yeah.
even though it very clearly was not.
No,
And
it feels like people maybe remember it more for nostalgia versus being like a great movie in a
yeah,
way.
very much so.
I
And
know. To bring them up, Siskel and Ebert hated this movie. I actually really like Ebert's comment on it. I took this note where he said that it was surprisingly violent, sexist, and blood-soaked.
yeah, I mean
Yeah,
it's accurate.
yeah, yeah.
Uh,
Um,
Now, what's one mental image you'd like to hear about? Is it supposedly Hulk Hogan went to Cannes with this movie?
no way.
Like they were
No way.
they took this movie to Cannes and they screened that there at Cannes, and like supposedly he was like like they just were asking him, like he was like doing poses in front of like the poster, like trying to get people interested about this movie.
That is so funny. I couldn't even imagine. That's only someone who's just like cocaine, like coked out of their mind, is like, yeah, Ken is gonna love this movie. Like, I
Yeah,
couldn't even imagine.
absolutely. It very much is like that. And so on opening night for this movie, like the premiere of this movie,
Hmm.
um, so apparently like they're screening this movie, and one of the promotionals was that Kurt Fuller, like they filmed all these vignettes like before and
Hmm.
after the movie where they had Kurt Fuller like running up and down the hallways like screaming like, "Where's Hulk Hogan? He ruined my movie!" Like
What?
implying that apparently like Zeus was supposed to win in the movie, but Hulk Hogan went off script and won the movie. Like,
What? Oh my god, that is bizarre.
and like, and then after the movie let out, Kurt Fuller would like run up to kids and like yell in their face and like steal their ice cream cone or whatever, like just
That's kind of awesome, actually.
act like a total like psycho villain. And oh yeah, we forgot to mention too. He does call Hogan a jackass again at the end of the movie.
Yeah, yeah, he does. But he gets what he deserves, death.
Yeah. So that's Kirk Fuller's deal. He he went on to have a pretty notable career. He had a lot
Yeah,
of
a lot of stuff.
he had some other notable roles.
Mhm.
So what about Zeus though?
Zeus,
What do you think happened to him after this movie was over, Nathan?
he's a lot of different movies.
Well, no, that besides his movie career, we all know he was in Friday, Dark Knight, and all that.
Hmm. Hmm.
So at the time, so they're really banking on this movie being a hit. Like
Yeah.
they're really thinking like this thing is going to be money type of thing. And so they get Zeus, who has zero wrestling experience, and they're thinking, let's put him in the wrestling ring for real.
Okay. How did that go?
Not well.
Yeah.
So he's very much like to be a wrestler. I mean, there's a lot more than to just you're a big muscular dude. I mean,
Yes. Yeah.
to put on like an actual good match. And eventually what happened is that Zeus was put in like an actual wrestling ring, and they're thinking Zeus is going to be this huge character, no holds barred, it's going to do all this big money. And there he was in at least three wrestling matches. He was in
Okay.
um a match with where he tag team with Randy Savage, and it was Hulk Hogan and Brutus the Barber Beefcake.
All right.
And a steel cage match.
Mm.
And then the other one where they did that same tag match, but it was uh, at the main event of SummerSlam.
Okay.
And then again in 1989 he was in the Survivor Series, and he was teaming up with the Million Dollar Man and Powers of Pain against Hulk Hogan, Jake the Snake Roberts, and Demolition.
Oh wow. Okay.
And again, so and supposedly what the time was going to be is that they were building to the WrestleMania main event with Hogan versus Zeus.
Oh wow, they were gonna do it like in real life.
Right, but
Yeah.
due to poor performance at the box office and Zeus just being a really crappy wrestler, never
Mm.
happened.
Gotcha.
Never materialized. And then now that's not to say his wrestling career ended there, because back in 1996, Zeus came to WCW because Hulk Hogan wanted to actually like put him in another match, and
Nice.
he came into WCW and wrestled as Z Gangsta.
Oh boy. Oh boy.
And I can tell you his wrestling ability did not improve that much.
That's funny.
But my God, so much involved with this movie.
Yeah, I was not expecting this from this movie. There's a lot of info going on here, and I loved it. I really did.
Yeah, it's really astounding, like the amount of work that was put into it. I mean, pretty much just this insane visionary of what Vince McMahon wanted out of the movie, what Vince McMahon wanted to see out of the movie, and just and Hulk Hogan, I'm sure, definitely had his DNA all over it, where he's just painting himself as this patron saint and just very much like, I'm a good guy. All the women's love me. You know, I'm an excellent fighter too. It's just crazy to think like they're just like, this is a kids movie. You know, this is appropriate for children. But I mean, not even the kids wanted to watch this movie.
No, yeah. Except for you, Ryan.
Oh, well, I mean, I didn't get to see it in theaters, unfortunately,
no.
because I was too young. But you better believe I owned this movie on VHS.
I'm sure this movie was a hit on VHS. I'm sure it was rented a lot.
That I don't know.
Really? Okay.
But it might have been. I don't know. But I don't feel like it was. But
yeah, I guess you were able to pick it up. You know, there were no difficult days getting it.
No, there wasn't. But I will say this, it's not good at all. I mean, it's very much very much a movie, but my Lord, it is entertaining, and it's for all the wrong reasons.
Yeah, exactly. It's like one of those movies where I came out of it, it's like I enjoyed this a lot. So like it's really fun. It's a good time, but it could easily, I would understand if somebody was like, this is one of the worst movies I've ever seen. I'd be like, I get it. I totally get it. But isn't it fun? Didn't you laugh a lot? Kind of deal. So that's why I say I recommend it. I think it's an anomaly that you have to see.
Oh, absolutely. This is 100% a recommend for me. I mean, it's if you want a good time, having some fun, having some laughs, there's really not much more you could ask for out of the movie.
For sure.
But I will. We're gonna drop the title on this one.
What? Wait, are we gonna have to hold our bars again?
Yeah, we're gonna some holds are gonna be barred for this next episode. I'm sorry.
Okay.
You should have gotten all the holds out you wanted. This was your chance.
Oh shit. Okay. Oh wait. That was my hold.
There you go. Oh yeah, this would have been the one episode we were allowed to swear and uncensored.
No, but this show is for the children. This one's for the kids. So
yeah, this one's squeaky clean.
Yes. No, this show is meant for everybody.
But that's it on this one. So Nathan, what are we talking about next time?
So next week we are going to be talking about, well, guess what? We're returning to Bondzilla, actually. So we are going to be talking about The Spy Who Loved Me. Roger Moore is back, and we have even more James Bond, and not The Spy Who Shagged Me, okay? All right.
Oh, darn.
Yeah. No, and The Spy Who Loved Me is not streaming anywhere, so you will have to buy or rent this one.
You know what? Good.
Spend money.
Well, terrific. So let's thank you so much for joining us. Once again, if you have any thoughts, opinions, suggestions, please email us over at driveandoublefeaturepodcast@gmail.com. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter at DIDFpod. And once again, check out the Patreon over at patreon.com/driveandoublefeaturepodcast. But until next time, brother.
Until next time.